Hey guys, finally the last topic in chapter 2. So we are finishing up rational functions by solving rational equations, okay? So our learning target today, first of all, rational equations involve fractions and can be solved by multiplying each term through by the least common denominator, which will eliminate the denominators. Okay, so I can solve rational equations and determine extraneous solutions, which are extra ones that don't work. Okay, this is just a quick review of how we did these at the beginning of the year. There's no x's in the denominators, but what we did was we figured out the common denominator here. Let's see, 56 is divisible by 7 and 2. So if we multiplied everything all the way through by a 56, we should really write it this way on both sides, I know. So we did 56 times x minus 4. 56 times 4 divided by 7, which turned out to be 32. And then 56 times 3 divided by 2, which turned out to be 28 times 3. I don't have my calculator open. 144. And that one had an x. Don't lose that x. And over here, 56 times 3 divided by 56 was just 3. And then we could solve. And it came out a fraction, but we didn't have a denominator anymore. All right, this one we would have multiplied through by an 8 because that's the common denominator. So we'd have 8 times 9 is 72, divided by 2 is 36, and that had an n. 8 times 3n would be 24n. And over here, 8 times 15 divided by 8 would have been 15, and we would have gone from there. All right, so it made it much easier to solve if we just multiplied everything by the least common denominator and all the denominators canceled. That works because it's an equation with an equal sign, okay? So the other thing that we have to be really careful of as we do these, because there's x's in the denominator, we cannot let x equal 4 here. It's not in the domain because there is an x minus 4 in the denominator. So if we think about that from the beginning of the problem, that'll help us find any extraneous solutions. Everything else should work unless we wound up with an x equals 4 at the end of this. All right, this particular question had the only denominator besides 1 was an x minus 4. So we're going to choose to multiply both sides by an x minus 4 here and over here. So they helped us out by saying it's x times x minus 4, and then we had this fraction here that also need to multiply by an x minus 4, and over here we had this. Okay, so if we distribute, and look what happens, this divides out, so we're just left with minus 8, and then we do have to distribute over here. Now, it has x squared, so we need to make it equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 11 x's back over here and add 44. I don't have a lot of room, so I'm just showing it in one step. Let's see, 44 minus 8 would be 36. Did I do that right? I think so. Positive. And back here, we'd have an x squared minus 15x. Okay. If we factor this, we get an x minus 12 and 3. I almost put 9 and 4, but 9 and 4 don't add up to 15. So to make this equivalent to 36 and add up to 15, we needed a minus 12 and a minus 3. So we'd get x squared minus 12x minus 3x would be minus 15x. 12 times 3 is 36, and it'd be positive, so we're all good. Then if we set them equal to 0, we get x equals 12 or 3. Now, we have to examine this for an extraneous solution, but neither one of those are 4, so there should be 2 solutions. This is actually one of the easy ones to check if you wanted to. You would have 12 minus 8 over 12 minus 4 equals 11, which would be 12 minus 8 over 8, or 1, equals 11. That one checks. The other one would be 3 minus 8 over 3 minus 1, and that would be 3 minus 8. What did I do wrong? This was 3 minus 4 down here. It comes out negative 1. And so this would be 3 plus, this was 8 divided by negative 1, be negative 8, so plus 8 equals 11, and that checks as well. These are really tricky to check sometimes. They should always work if you have not made a mistake along the way, and as long as your answer does not make the denominator 0. All right, this one is all done out for you. I'll let you check it out. They figured out that the common denominator needed to have a 6 and an x minus 2. So they multiplied this guy by a 6 and an x minus 2. The x minus 2's divided out, and 3 went into 6 twice. So they ended up with a 2 and an x plus 1. This one had a 6, so when they multiplied it by an x minus 2, okay, it just, I'm really confused. Okay, this one had a 6. Oh, they just show it here. Okay, so when they distribute here, the 6 is going to drop out. So it came out with a 5x times an x minus 2 up there. And then when they multiplied this one by 6 and x minus 2 back here, the x minus 2 is going to drop out. So they have 6 times 1. All right, then they distributed, got everything on one side, da-da-da-da-da. But the beginning of the problem, somebody was quick, or at the end, to notice that x cannot equal 2 because of the denominator. So when they got this solution at the end, they had to throw this one away and say the only solution is x equals 2/5. But on the quiz on this, you're going to have to say is a solution, but you're also going to have to pick x equals 2 is an extraneous solution. So be real careful that you're understanding how that came about and doing the algebra so that you can find both the real solution and the extraneous one. All right, this one's pretty easy. I'll go quickly. Common denominator is m. It's the only denominator, so we're going to multiply everything on both sides by an m. So we end up with here the m divides out. Here we end up with an m squared. And back here we have an 8m. And over here we have a 10m. So if we move everything, I'm actually going to move it all this way because I don't like negative on my squareds. Makes me really confused. So I'm going to add an m squared over here. I'm going to subtract 8m, which will leave 2. And then I'm going to subtract that 15. And then it will factor m minus 3, m plus 5 to get a 2 in the middle. So we get m equals 3 or negative 5. And the only restriction back here was m can't equal 0. So therefore both of these should work. We could plug them back in. If we put a 3 in here, we'd get 5 minus 3 is 2. Plus 8 is 10. It works. Put a negative 5 in, we'd get negative 3 plus 5, which is 2, plus 8 is 10. So they both check. I just talked myself through that super fast. All right, number 2. Common denominator here needs both a b and a b minus 3. So I'm going to write it out on this one. I'm going to write all 3 parts of this problem. And I'm going to show you that we're going to multiply a b and a b minus 3 all the way through. All right, so what happens here is those divide out, not using cancel. These divide out. We could have distributed that before we wrote it down, but I'm showing all my work. And this factor divides out. So we have a 4b plus 3b minus 9 equals a negative 2b squared. I'm going to add the 2b squared over here. Add these two and I get 7b minus 9 equals 0. Yikes. That's interesting to factor. Not too bad. 2b and 1b. Factors of 9 are either 9 and 1, which I actually think 9 and 1 is our right plan. Let's see. Plus 9b minus 2b would be 7b in the middle and a minus 9 at the back. I know some of you it takes a while to factor. Be careful, just take your time. Here, if we set this equal to 0, we get negative 9 halves. Here we get b equals 1. If we go back to the beginning of this problem, the denominator had a b and a b minus 3 were our denominators across the way. So we have b cannot equal 0 or 3, but those are not either one of these answers, so both should work. I'm not going to take time to check. I promise they will. It's very tricky to check because you have to put parentheses around the top and the bottom as you type things in. All right, number 3. This is a trick because 2 minus 1, this factors, okay. This side factors y minus 2, y plus 2. So the common denominator needs to have a y plus 2 and a y minus 2 and a 2 minus y, question mark? See, we can rewrite this as y minus 2 as long as we take the opposite. If we multiply a negative 1 down here and a negative 1 up here, then it's okay. So we'll have, this will become a negative 2, which is this, minus the negative y becomes positive y. So now we have this factor in the denominator. And what happens up top is that negative 1 will make this plus positive 1y. All right, so I'm going to write this out. We have a 2 over y plus 2. We have a positive 1y over a y minus 2. And we have a y squared plus 4 over a y minus 2 and a y plus 2. The common denominator we're going to multiply by everywhere is a y minus 2 and a y plus 2. A y minus 2 and a y plus 2. A y minus 2 and a y plus 2. All right, here the y plus 2's will divide out and we're left with a 2 and a y minus 2. Here the y minus 2's will divide out. We're left with a y and a y plus 2. Here the y minus 2's and the y plus 2's will cancel and we're left with a y squared plus 4. Distribute. Whoops. Akbar's trying to go too fast. Lots of complaints about how long the videos are. Can always slow me down or speed me up when you're watching. Y squared plus 2y. I'm sure my voice sounds really funny if you speed me up or slow me down, but that's okay. Oh, look what happens if we subtract a y squared off both sides. Lovely. So I'm going to actually add this 4 over here so that I have 2y plus 2y is 4y. And over here I have 4 plus 4 is 8. And I divide and get y equals 2. Uh-oh. Anybody have alarms going off in their head? Remember what our denominator was way back up here? Y could not equal 2 or negative 2. So this is a no. So we end up with no solution. okay? 2 was an extraneous solution. So be careful on these. All right. I thought there was a couple I was going to skip. Oh, there we go. Number 4 I'm going to do with you, I guess. Common denominator would be an x and an x minus 3. So we have 60 over x minus 60 over x plus 3. Did I say minus 3? Should be x plus 3. Equals 1. All right, I'm going to multiply this by an x and an x plus 3. Same thing here. And over here. I know some of you don't like to show your work on these, but it gets really confusing to follow, and then you end up lost and losing terms. So now we have a 60 and an x plus 3. I will show a little less work. I'll distribute it right there. How's that? Here the x plus 3 is going to divide out, so we just have a minus 60x. And over here we're going to distribute and get a 1x plus, squared plus 3x. All right, these actually cancel each other out or subtract. 60x minus 60x is 0. If I move this over to the other side, I probably shouldn't write it there. Somebody's going to look at the notes and go, where did that come from? So we end up with 0 equals x squared plus 3x minus 180. Okay, some of you that take a little while to factor, I'm pretty sure it's 15 and 12. Positive 3x, yeah, that works. So we get x equals negative 15 or positive 12. And back at the beginning, we had an x and an x plus 3 in our denominator. So x can't be 0 or negative 3. We are golden. These should both work. All right, number 5 will be done on the notes. The common denominator you're going to need is a 4 and an x plus 3. I'll do that in the notes, but I just want you guys to try that one on your own. Make the video a little shorter. All right, number 6. What you need to do here is factor before you do anything else, because we might not need all of this mess as our common denominator. Let's see, that factors x minus 6, x plus 3. What do you know? This one already has, I'm going to leave the top unfactored. This one down here already has an x plus 3. And this factors the same. So our common denominator, and this is a trick. When we have subtracting, we have to distribute that at some point into this problem. I can wait and do it in a minute, but just remember we're subtracting there. All right, common denominator is going to need an x plus 3 and an x minus 6. So I'm multiplying through by that common denominator. I'm not getting a common denominator. I'm multiplying through by it so that my denominator goes away. Okay, I know some of you are thinking that's way too much work to show, but all right, both of these are going to drop out and we have 1. This one is going to drop out and I'm going to have to distribute this negative at some point. I'm going to go ahead and distribute this and say it's now plus a negative 2x plus 4. I got rid of the negative, but I still have to multiply it by an x minus 6. There's a fun FOIL problem coming up. And over here, x minus 6 and x plus 3 dropped out. We have an x plus 2. All right, so I made it an addition by distributing the negative. Now if I FOIL this together, I have a negative 2x squared. That would be plus 12x. This would be plus 4x. And this would be minus 24. Because it has a squared, I want it to equal 0 at some point. I guess I won't confuse you by moving everything to the right. I'll just subtract this x over here and this 2 somewhere so that it comes out 0, and then we'll talk about that negative. So it has a negative 2x squared. 12x plus 4x would be 16, minus 1 would be 15x, and 1 minus 24 would be negative 23, minus 2 more would be negative 25. Did I do that right? I think so. All right, now my suggestion is you just decide to divide everything by -1 or multiply through by a -1 on both sides, because I don't like factoring when there is a leading coefficient that's negative. All right, I am running out of room here. So I have a 2x and an x. I need to make a 15. Well, I only have 1 and 25 or 5 and 5. If I put 5 and 5 and both minus, and I FOIL that back together, I'd get a 2x squared, that's good, minus 10x on the outside and 5x on the inside would be negative 15x, and then -5 times -5 is 25, so that did check. All right, if I set this equal to 0, I get x equals 5 halves. If I set this one equal to 0, whoa, I get x equals 5. So I need to go back to the very beginning of this problem and figure out what my domain restrictions were. Well, from right here, my domain restriction right there is x cannot be 6 or -3. And that works for all of these. And those were not my solutions at the end. So both of these work. All right. You can practice this one. So there's 2 I'm leaving you to practice on your own. And then there is a practice assignment that is a written assignment, not a Delta Math assignment. And I believe I assigned 4 or 5 questions, and then there's a couple extra on the practice worksheet if you need more practice. All right, 23-minute video. We did it. Thanks, guys.